Ahoy Squid Squad! Today, we're talking all about the Squid backend. I'll be diving into some concepts first, and then I'll show you just how quick and easy it is to spin up a backend for a new Squid app. Let's get started. The Squid backend has the ability to access any required resources and can be designed to be as simple or as complex as necessary. Using Squid backend code, you can secure access to various resources, respond to changes in a database, define schedulers, expose webhooks and APIs, expose backend functions to the client, and much more. So let's start by initializing a Squid backend. In the Squid Cloud console, I create a new app. Scrolling to the backend project section, I copy the initialization command. I also see a command to install the Squid Cloud CLI, which you'll want to run before using Squid commands during development. To generate the backend project, I open a terminal window and run the initialization command. Now let's look at the overall structure of the Squid backend project we just initialized. The .env file contains information about your app needed for local development. The services folder contains the business logic that you will be writing. And the public folder is used for different assets like images and email templates to make them available in your backend code. Now that we have a backend project, we can run it locally and connect it to a front-end app for development and testing, and then later on deploy it to Squid. To run locally, I run the Squid start command, and thanks to hot reloading, I can see the changes I make reflect instantly. This is a regular TypeScript project that runs on Node, so you can use any IDE, and you can set breakpoints if you would like to debug it. Let's check out the example service. This is a class that extends the Squid service class. Squid service gives you access to your client instance for the application, user authentication information about the client app you're connecting to, so you can secure your service based on a known authorized user, and secrets access, so you can access sensitive data like API keys and passwords without exposing them. We use function decorators in our Squid service class to define the purpose of the function and access unique features and properties supplied by the decorator. For example, let's take this default function that comes with the initialized Squid backend. Squid comes with a built-in database, which is what's shown here, and it's what I'll be using in my examples. Take a moment to read the function. It says, secure database, all, built-in DB. Right away, you can tell what this function does, even though you haven't used the Squid backend SDK before. The function name is allow all access to built-in DB, and it returns true. As you can see, understanding TypeScript is enough to understand this function, which makes Squid easy to get started with. At the same time, you can make functions like this fully customizable to address even the most complex use cases, since they're written like any other TypeScript function. So for example, you could check if the user has an admin attribute associated with their authentication context. You could check what data the user is trying to write and verify that a required field is included. There are infinite options, and this is just one of the decorators Squid provides. In addition to secure database, Squid provides a variety of other decorators for purposes like exposing and securing APIs, accessing functionality from the client, cron jobs, and more. Since our backend is still running locally right now, I'd love to leave off the video by adding a function to our example service class and seeing how it works. Imagine we want a webhook to trigger when a new user is created in one of our integrated services. The webhook will be invoked when a user signs up for an account. For example, we can use a webhook to automatically create a profile for a user in our built-in database the first time they authenticate with some authentication provider. I'll use the webhook decorator to mark this function. I'll call it new user profile, which will be part of the URL. The function is called add user profile, just so it's easy for us to tell its purpose. I use the Squid instance that's built into the backend to insert a new document into the user's collection of my built-in database. Then I'll just send a message with a 200 response. Note that this endpoint is not yet secured. I'll show an example of adding security in a moment. Now let's test it out. Sure enough, we get back our 200 response with the message. I can also preview my database data in the Squid Cloud console and confirm that John Doe was added to the user's collection. Let's take it a couple steps further to make it a bit more realistic. For one thing, we want to secure this endpoint to prevent unwanted access to resources. I'll do that using an API key that I just made up. I generated it in the Squid Cloud console, but you can also generate secrets in the Squid backend. And instead of adding this random John Doe user every time, the new user's information will come from the provider. So let's assume it's in the query parameters of the request going to the webhook, like this. Here, I'm checking if the request made by my webhook has a query parameter of API key. I use Squid secrets to access a known secret in the backend without exposing it in my code. And then I compare that API key to my secret. And if they're not the same, we respond with an unauthorized message. Then I'm going to check for name and username query parameters, and then write this new user to the database. Putting it all together, I create my request with my API key and user query parameters. And then I can head over to the Squid Cloud console and confirm that a new user was added to the user collection. Awesome! I can also remove this API key and see that the request does not go through. Now I'm ready to deploy my backend. I deploy to the dev environment using Squid Deploy. With the deploy to dev, team members are all able to preview changes live before they go to prod. Then when I'm ready to deploy to prod, I can copy the deploy command from the console. From there, Squid handles running and scaling the backend so you can focus on adding your next feature. Isn't it amazing that we were able to create that webhook in only a couple of minutes? Imagine how fast you will be able to build feature-rich applications with Squid. Be sure to share your latest projects with us on Discord or X. Thanks for watching.